political opponents. That's what the U.S. left. And Kim Il-sung, his great-grandson, his great-grandson is the current leader of North Korea. Yeah, he was the real deal. His grandson is, well, he's typical inbred monarch. He's now like a little kingdom there. But what happened was this. They could not agree on unifying the country. Both sides were going, any talks were going nowhere, and that's when, in June 25th, 1950, North attacked. The North was going to unify Korea. If you're not going to unify it, we're going to unify our country. To that point of view, this is in essence a civil war. Korea should be unified. And the thing was, it was a disaster for the South. They did not have an effective army. They did not have anti-tank weapons. And very quickly, Seoul fell, and North Korean forces advanced far. In fact, they got about 100 miles into South Korea in about 3 days. It was a disaster for South Korea. And it looked like they were going to win. And this got back to the United States, and it created a firestorm. We already have Joe 1. We have Korea. McCarthyism is growing. No American president can allow this. And so even though most Koreans could not have, or most Americans could not have found Korea on the map, I hope Koreans could, Truman is going to commit troops. And remember, it's that Truman Doctrine. Truman Doctrine. And also all these other things. We have all those shocks and McCarthyism. But according to the Truman Doctrine, who is really leading this attack? It's not Kim, it's who? Stalin is doing it. Now, we know for a fact that Stalin was giving him equipment and was at least interested in the North unifying the country. But Stalin was taken by surprise by this attack just as much as the Americans were. And I'll prove it to you in just a second. But we said this is communist aggression. Truman ordered troops, fat and happy, from very cushy occupation duty in Japan, sent them near a place called Daejeon. I'll get back to them in a second. And then Truman announced he's sending troops without congressional approval at all. He just said he's doing it because what act did Congress pass just 2 years earlier so the president could take warlike powers in case something was threatened? National Security Act. And so, a couple things about this. He sent troops. Reporters asked him, is this a war? Is this, what is this? Truman did not want to say war. He did not want it to look like we're involved in another land war in Asia. He didn't want to make it look like World War III. Finally, an exasperated reporter said, is this a police action? And Truman said, yes, it's a police action. And that became the dark joke about this horrible war that over 40,000 Americans are going to die and millions of Koreans. It implies like we're going to send over the police and arrest North Korea when this is full-scale war. But the other thing Truman did is he went to the untied nations. And going to the untied nation, the thing about that is that yeah, I know, I didn't know that. And I thought that was pretty funny, so I left it there. The untied nations.
Yes, untied.
But remember the Security Council? The Security Council is the one that's going to make all the decisions. 5 countries have a veto. And he went to the Security Council and said, this is North Korean aggression. The UN should stop it.
Soviet was like,
Where were the Soviets?
no.
Were they there?
Yeah.
They were boycotting it because the United States would not allow the People's Republic of China, we call it Red China, to have a seat. So the Soviets weren't even there. So for the only time in its history, the UN would vote to actually send troops to stop aggression because the Soviets weren't there. Now there would be US peacekeepers later on, but the idea would be there's already a peace agreement made and they would like be a buffer zone. The US would do that. So this is actually a Canadian outpost. Some Canadian troops went under the UN flag. And that's how we know Stalin was taken by surprise just as much. If he would have known this was going to happen, there's no way he would have been boycotting the Security Council. But by then it was too late. Very quickly he went there, but by then they couldn't stop this resolution because it had been passed and the U.S. would veto it. And the United States, oh, I already mentioned that. So General Douglas MacArthur would be the U.S. or be the commander of UN forces. Remember, he was the general commander of the in the Southwest Pacific in World War II. He's the guy who would actually accept the Japanese surrender. He'd be the military governor of Japan, and he still was at this time. So he'd command all forces under the UN flag. And a lot of countries would send a few troops, but it was mostly South Korean draftees and US draftees. Remember, that's selective service now. But Britain would send like a brigade. Canada would send a couple of battalions. France was involved in her own war, which we will soon get involved in a place called Vietnam. And like Luxembourg sent a company. Turkey sent about 5,000 troops. But it was mostly the US and South Korea. And what happened was those very first US troops that arrived right here near Daejeon were routed. A disaster. They didn't go with heavy weapons. They thought Americans would just show up and the North Koreans would just collapse. And the North Koreans ran right over them. They literally just ran right over them and kept going. A panicky retreat followed. That's an American soldier wounded in that first initial battle. That's a North Korean tank. And by September, or by the end of August, American and South Korean forces were bottled up in this little tiny area called the Pusan perimeter. There's a harbor there called Pusan, one of the biggest harbors in South Korea to this day. That's it. But fortunately for the South Koreans and Americans, the North Koreans ran out of supplies. Their tanks began to break down, and they couldn't defeat them. Yeah.
When were they just not small?
So basically, the end of August of 1950. So you think about it, it was 2 months, and they took it all. But they were now out of supplies. And MacArthur's starting to get reinforcements. The United States began to mobilize its reserves, and they even called out hundreds of thousands of inactive reserves. That means men who were drafted in like 43, 44, 45, who had been out of the service, been civilians. They were called back in. So like my wife's grandfather lived in Phillipsburg, and he was in the Navy in 44 and 45, and the war started. In 2 months, he was on an aircraft carrier going back. The most famous person called back was Ted Williams. Baseball. Yeah, probably the greatest hitter in Major League Baseball history. So he was having a great year with the Boston Red Sox, and right in the middle of the season, they called him back to the Marines. Dang. So he missed 2 years. He was a fighter pilot. And it's amazing, too, because jet fighters are really small, and he's my height. And I can't fit. I could never have been a fighter pilot. I can't fit.
You tried.
Yeah, I've sat in the cockpit.
But he did.
I don't know how he did it. He must have relatively small feet, because the biggest issue I have, not only would my shoulders run against my head, be right against the canopy, but if he had to eject, it ripped my feet off.
Ooh,
That's bad for morale.
that can't
But so he somehow did it. But anyways, MacArthur came up with a plan. Everybody said, okay, we just got to reinforce here. He said, no, North Korea's overextended. Let's attack up here near Seoul. They'll never expect it. Everybody told them it wouldn't work, but MacArthur said it would. They landed at a harbor called Incheon. It didn't have a real beach. It was muddy. These are Marines landing at it. There was a seawall they had to climb over. That's Marines actually doing it at Incheon. And they thought they'd get bottled up in this harbor with really unpredictable tides, and it would never work. The North Koreans were taken totally by surprise, and it was probably MacArthur's greatest victory. Totally took them by surprise. They took Seoul, so that was September. They took Seoul in a week. And the North Koreans began a panicky retreat as fast as they could go. But then Eisenhower, who was vainglorious beyond belief, he, instead of cutting them off and ending the war right there, he wanted another glorious invasion up here. And the North Koreans escaped back into North Korea. The UN resolution was to not only push the North Koreans back, but to destroy their army so they don't do it again. What do you do now? That's what he did. Truman didn't want to invade. Truman's like, we won, it's over. But MacArthur invaded, and Truman didn't want to rock the boat. They're winning. So they invaded the north, they crossed the 38th parallel, and actually took the North Korean capital in a month. Yeah.
Instead of Eisenhower.
That's Eisenhower?
Yeah.
I meant MacArthur, I'm sorry. And so Pyongyang fell, the capital, and by the middle of October, American and South Korean patrols were at the Yalu River, which is the border with North Korea. In fact, they even sent some patrols over the river into China. Now, two things. First off, that's the 38th parallel, so that's that border. See the weather there? The assumption was in the United States that Korea might get cold, but they never thought it would get that cold. So they never supplied American troops enough. They're still wearing cotton, fall, moderate weather clothing. By the end of October, nighttime temperatures were getting 30 degrees below zero in the north. By November, 50 and 60 degrees below zero. Yeah, and wind chill 1,000 below. No, we're talking highs of 30 below. It's incredibly cold there. So we were totally unprepared. And then this, Mao Zedong, the leader of the People's Republic of China, Red China, he said, I'll never allow North Korea to lose. I can't have an enemy right on my border. So he threatened to do something. Now, China did not have industry. They just fought a horrible civil war. They were devastated by Japan in World War II. But there's a lot of Chinese. A lot of them. And that's a lot mass wave attacks. That's a big deal. Well, Truman was worried, and MacArthur assured him, nothing to fear. So Truman, don't worry about this right here. Truman called him to Wake Island. So MacArthur and Truman met for the very first time. The island's right about here, so like halfway across the Pacific. They met on Wake Island. There they are actually meeting on the island, and yes, it's all smiles, but they despised each other. MacArthur had no respect for Truman, and Truman thought MacArthur was full of crap. But MacArthur assured him, if the Chinese attack, we'll deal them a blow they'll never recover. Do not worry about it. And so, Truman said, he's gone. Hey, we're winning. He looks good now. He was unpopular 4 months ago, now he's popular. One more thing. This is the only name we have to get. Don't worry about Marshall here. The new Secretary of State was Dean Acheson. And there's Acheson right here. And Acheson would convince Truman it's okay. Acheson was a new breed of politician, a Cold Warrior, who do everything to stop communism and treat this Cold War as, in essence, almost the real thing. So he was economically in the United States a liberal Democrat and a rabid Cold Warrior. And be one of the architects of the Cold War. By the 1960s, he'd be one of the wise men who would push Kennedy and Johnson into Vietnam. And like all wise men, he was right all the time, except most of the time he was wrong. That's me being facetious. Most of the time he was wrong, but they keep hiring him back because he was wise. And so what happened on Thanksgiving Day? 500,000 Chinese attacked. In fact, U.S. forces were already engaging with the Chinese weeks before, but they were still taken by surprise. This is from Time magazine. I love how they make the Chinese attack, and it's like a brass knuckles. Waves of Chinese soldiers, well equipped for the winter. They had these padded white canvas jackets that were really warm, and they didn't have heavy equipment. They didn't have many vehicles, but they had lots of men. They would still use bugles to announce their attack.
That seems really good.
And the thing about it is that, especially as the war went on, they do night attacks because the Americans had such superior firepower. And that sound of that bugle, can you imagine just this piercing sound of a bugle and waves of attackers? Guy used to teach her, great guy, science teacher. He was in Korea. He fought a year there. And he's told me that I hear a bugle and I start shaking. This was 20 years ago. So. And he said, I start shaking. I still get nervous about that. And, you know, I mean, it's just because it was terrifying. They just kept coming. You shoot them, and they just kept coming. To the Chinese, it was terrifying too, because they had blocking forces behind. If they turned around, they would have got shot in the back. They wouldn't advance. So that's the kind of fight it was. Well, right here, the Americans were routed and surrounded by the Chinese, and they began to retreat. The retreat turned into absolute panic as the temperature dropped below 50 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Engines froze. Weapons would not fire because the oil would freeze within the guns. And it turned out to be the worst defeat in American military history since the Battle of the Little Bighorn. That's how bad it was. Marines were cut off out here at the Chosin Reservoir, but fortunately the U.S. had a Navy. So they fought their way out, and most of them were pulled out. But it was a disaster. Chinese, oh, I put this map up there thinking it would help. It's pretty worthless, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any idea? Yeah, this pretty much explains it, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. But Chinese and the remaining North Korean forces pushed the Americans and South Koreans all the way south of Seoul. So by the spring of '51, it was a total disaster. Truman's popularity plummeted, but MacArthur was humiliated. And he wanted to prove he was back in charge, and you can probably guess what he wanted. Let's make the war bigger. Let's attack mainland China and even the Soviet Union with what? I don't know why I put MacArthur as president here. That's the wrong spot. But he even talked about putting a carpet, he called it a carpet, of atomic waste just north of the Yalu River to stop the Chinese from resupplying it. And if the Soviets do anything, his plan was to drop this is what I wanted. I forgot to. His plan was to drop an atomic bomb on the Kremlin. So he wanted World War III to disguise the fact that he totally miscalculated. In fact, it made it clear he had no idea what he was talking about. He acted like he knew nothing. But he implied that it was because of Truman that they didn't win. This is actually the Chosin Reservoir, and you get an idea how miserable these soldiers are. These are Marines. And it is bitterly cold. And that's a Chinese attack. Well, Truman ordered him, no, be quiet. Not only did MacArthur disobey the order, he went public and went to friendly reporters and said, Truman won't let me win the war. The president won't let me win. The president is going to let the communists take over the United States, including Wyoming. He disobeyed a direct order. And for months, Truman was scared, though, to fire MacArthur. Until finally, when MacArthur said that we should be dropping an atomic bomb on, they called it then Peking, MacArthur was fired. And MacArthur came home as almost a conquering hero. This is the first time he's been in the United States since 1936. He'd been to the Philippines and after war in Japan. He had to leave the army in disgrace because he had an extramarital affair. Officers have an extramarital affair, they're supposed to be court-martialed to this day. That's going against their honor code. But here's MacArthur at the ticker tape parade down Fifth Avenue in New York City, and it was the biggest one since Charles Lindbergh. And it was seen as though he was the one who really knew how to win the war and bring MacArthur back. These protests would be everywhere. Truman's popularity plunged, and he would leave office. Now, they do approval polls for president. They started them in the mid-1940s after the war. So we only have basically Truman through today. But he left with an approval rating of about 38%. And that was considered shockingly low. Now, Nixon would be in the 20s when he resigned in 1974. George W. Bush was in the low 30s when he left office in 2008, 2009. But anything below 50% is considered relatively low. It's low, historically low. We have a new history now because the current president is always in the upper 30s of approval rating. So I don't know, maybe that's the new normal. Yes.
Which president has the highest approval rating?
You know, it's really hard to say. Probably the highest approval rating was George W. Bush. Right after September 11th, his approval rating went up to about 95%. kind of the one that's going to rally behind. For a few times in there, Kennedy had in the 80s. Clinton had in the upper 60s for a while. President Obama was always kind of upper 50s and then went down to the high 40s and had an office in the upper or the mid 50s. So with that, he's fired and Truman will be blamed, and there's talk of MacArthur becoming the next president. And here is, okay, so this is public opinion as like a Bunsen burner, you know, burning. And there's Truman, Atchison, and the generic Pentagon. And you might notice it says John Q. Anybody know what that means? It's not used as much today, but the name for like just an average citizen was John Q. Public. I know that sounds kind of weird today, but John Q. Public. So that just meant that they're holding him to account. They're holding, he's in the frying pan. Here's one. The majestic figure of MacArthur, and look at the little man, Harry S. Truman. There should be a period there. S stands for S. He doesn't have a message, it just has a letter. Here is, if you can't read it, this is what Truman said, or Eisenhower said.
MacArthur.
Here's what MacArthur said when he spoke to Congress, a joint session of Congress. So if you can't read it, I'll read it. I'm concerned for the security of our great nation, not so much because of any threat from without, so Soviet Union, but because of the insidious forces working from within. We have enemies within who are betraying us. That fits very well with McCarthyism, doesn't it? Republicans were seriously talking about making MacArthur their nominee for president in 1952. In fact, it looked like he might get it, but as much as they liked some of his rhetoric, the real threat of World War III and an atomic bomb maybe they thought could drop on our cities, that caused them a start. And so Republicans actually looked elsewhere, even though MacArthur would speak at their convention and still be a very prominent Republican. That's a MacArthur? Yeah, I said MacArthur. So the election, so what's going to come out of this is this. After the Chinese get pushing back, we sent a new leader, Matt Ridgway, but don't worry about that. Here's where they're at. Because of American firepower, now the Chinese were out of supplies. The Allies, US and South Korea, pushed them back to this line right here, and then dug in. And it would remain stalemated at that line until October 1953, and that's the border today. The only fighting then on would be really horrific trench fighting, resemblance of World War I. These are Canadian, these are American forces, and thousands of casualties there. They actually had peace talks for 2 years. The big sticking issue was what to do with Chinese POWs, and that's a Chinese soldier right there. One thing I'll add, this area right here, really mountainous, really cold region. We just had an Olympics there. Imagine in the mountainous, rough area, imagine fighting there.
It's like fighting huge.
But even, get to some of the worst or the most rugged parts of mountains nearby here. That's what it's like. It's like pretty horrific fighting. I heard a couple people during the Olympics say it, but for the most part, they just. So with that, we have an election. Conservative Republicans thought it would be William Howard Taft's son. Finally, Robert Taft. But no, when Dwight Eisenhower in Europe sent back to friends, I'm a Republican. He wasn't a member of any party before that. He hadn't voted. And I want to be president. And once Eisenhower, he was such a hero, he was going to get the nomination. He was a liberal Republican. And conservative Republicans were furious, and that's why, as a compromise, they picked actually the master of all the red baiting senators, Richard Nixon. Nixon was very young, just over the constitutional age to be president. He was an up-and-coming politician. In 46 was the first time he was elected to Congress, 50 to the Senate, and now he's vice president, to the most popular person in the United States, at least right up there. What a rise. And he would do the dirty work. He'd be the hatchet man. He had no qualms about attacking the Democrats as communists and really push the envelope of red baiting, while Eisenhower could sit back above the fray. Which Eisenhower, they could act like he's not the one doing it. And that's give with the idea where Nixon got the nickname Tricky Dick. And because of that, Eisenhower hated him. Eisenhower hated him. Didn't like him before, didn't trust him, and hated the fact that he would do all those things to attack the Democrats when it was Eisenhower wanted to do it. Ironically, his youngest son would marry his oldest daughter. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Huh? His youngest son married his eldest daughter.
How do you pronounce the name of the father?
So, I'll tell you, nobody wanted to run against Eisenhower. No Democrat wanted this. But Adlai Stevenson, the governor of Illinois, an up-and-coming Democrat, it looked like his future was going to be huge. One of the most eloquent speakers of that era. Really thought he was going places. He didn't want to run against Eisenhower, but he finally accepted. And I just thought this was really fun. The Adlai Stevenson for president cigarette card. Different world in 1952, wasn't it? And 1952. And Stevenson dropped the civil rights thing. Remember, Truman had civil rights. He's not going to do anything about civil rights. But the thing was this. The Republicans immediately accused the M's of being soft on communism. And the thing about the M's is they didn't quite understand why they're being called M's. And normally they would have said the Dems. It cut off. You just see the... I can't get the screen to white, and I widen it a couple times, and then it just kind of goes back. So, yeah, there's something wrong, you know. But, and yes, you know, Korea, China, they said that Truman lost the war in Korea. That's how come we're now stalemated. But the big thing they pushed was the bomber gap. And put a big star by the bomber gap, because the bomber gap is this. The bomber gaps, the Republicans accused the Democrats of allowing the Soviets to have more bombers. The Soviets had more long-range bombers that could fly from bases like Murmansk over the Arctic with atomic bombs, bomb American cities, and then fly back to get more bombs. And they talked of waves of bombers, like the whole sky filled with bombers, each with an atomic bomb. And American cities are vulnerable right at that moment. And who did it? The Democrats. And therefore Stevenson. And it was a brilliant campaign ploy. Because how do you fight back?
You can't say no because otherwise you could say.
Of course you would say that. One more quick thing about it. Was there a bomber gap?
No.
A huge bomber gap. But maybe not the way they were saying. The United States had 400 of these planes right here. That's called the B-36 Peacemaker. It's the biggest production bomber ever made. Biggest production plane, wingspan and fuselage length ever made. It had 6 pusher engines, and then later on they would put 4 additional jets, 200 each one for it to take off. It had a range of 8,000 miles, carrying 60,000 pounds of bombs. Its range was so long, the plane was so big, it had crew quarters for reserve crew because it'd be in the air so long. If you ever see one of these things, you will not believe it. Remember the B-29, the kind of plane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima? That's a B-29. And that plane was considered massive in 1945.
You've seen a B-29, they're huge.
And it's not even close. There's a couple museums. There's one like near Omaha, Ohio, Smithsonian Airplane Museums, and they have a B-36. And it is just can't believe it. It was so big, they actually had plans to put 2 little jet fighters under each wing. So when the Soviets attacked, they would just kind of release them and they could spin around and try to defend the plane. They didn't know how to get the pilot back, so you just have to eject. But it's an amazing plan. And so they were really slow and easy to shoot down. But wow, what a plane. They used them all the way up to the early 60s. Yeah. No, 1960s we got rid of them. They're way too slow. We also had over 1,000 B-29s and an approved version called a B-50. Their range wasn't as long, but we had bases in Japan and Europe that could bomb virtually every major city in Europe. We also had medium new jet bombers called B-47s from bases. Those same bases could bomb most parts of Germany. So we had over 1,500 planes that could bomb, did I say Germany? Could bomb Russia.
And you said bomb Europe.
Most cities.
Most cities in European Russia. And here's the deal. How many planes did the Soviets have?
Not as many.
Zero.
Not a one. They didn't have one. They didn't have any planes that could fly over the Arctic, bomb the United States, and fly back. None. They had any.
Did they have anything that could like make it one?
Like a suicide mission. Yeah, they got a couple B-29s that had to land in Russia from bombing Japan, and they took them and they reverse engineered them. They called them the Tu-4, but maybe could have done that. But they were going to sue it. That wasn't a plan. And so with that, the bomber gap was a complete lie. Eisenhower knew it was a lie, but allowed it to happen. Truman knew it was a lie, but couldn't say anything because of national security. So what did people believe? It must be true. The Soviets are winning everywhere. Don't forget the bomber gap. I wonder if somebody will use that against the next person running as a Republican candidate. I wonder if somebody will use something similar against maybe perhaps Richard Nixon. We'll get to it. Who ran against Richard Nixon in 1960? Kennedy. Yes.
Did Russia even have the bombs if they had?
No, they didn't have very many at all. They just started making them. And they were way behind. They really wouldn't start accelerating the making of atomic bombs until after 1962.
Did we have the atomic bombs? Like enough?
Oh, yeah. We had enough to probably make all civilization. Now we have many times more. So with that, one more big thing happened. The Checkers speech. The Checkers speech was Richard Nixon's speech he gave to the public. And what happened was this. Back in 1950, Nixon used television, the brand new media, to basically, well, he made a name for himself by accusing a man in the State Department named Alger Hiss, a Democrat, of being a spy. And they publicized these, he was in HUAC, remember HUAC? And the Hiss, actually, they never proved he was a spy. It's still argued today, but they caught him for perjury. What's perjury?
Lying.
Yeah, he lied. And so they got him for lying under oath. And so Nixon took that as a great victory. That kind of propelled him to the Senate and the vice presidency. So Nixon's like, I'm a master with television. Well, then something happened. He was getting what they called in a slush fund from wealthy California businessmen. Nixon was poor. He had no money. Nixon had almost no money. He very poor family from Yorba Linda, California. That's a great name for a city, isn't it? It's a suburb of LA, Yorba Linda. And he had to work his way through college. There were no financial aid back then. He got scholarships to go to Duke Law School. And the thing was, virtually everybody who goes there, not having a lot different than today for schools like Duke or Ivy League schools, usually children of very wealthy people. And he always felt this big class difference. He always felt they looked down upon him. He resented it. And we'll have more about this resentment. He's humiliated by them, wanted to fight back against them, but he did it. He got through law school, he became successful, he became a congressman and senator, and then, because he was broke, businessmen were giving him money for living expenses during the campaign. Because he didn't have enough money. And it wasn't that much money, between $15,000 and $100,000, that's about $500,000 today. I know, but
That's nothing.
if you figure out about the way money spends, it's not huge. But this is just money, it wasn't for the campaign, he just used it for living expenses. It looked like a bribe. When they called it the slush fund, like slush money. Well, when they heard that, Ike was furious. Eisenhower was furious and wanted Nixon off the ticket. He never liked Nixon. And Nixon went on television. He went on TV. Donors brought him 30 minutes on this new media and was now nationwide. And he gave a half-hour speech on the new TV network, that was an old radio network called NBC. He gave this speech, and what he said was, I did not do anything dishonest. I'm not being bribed. I don't have a lot of money. In fact, he brought his family out as props. It was really humiliating. His wife was a very private person. It just really bothered her. Really bothered her. He said, my wife wears a good Republican cloth coat. And things like that, implying that they're just regular people. And then he said, sure, we got some gifts from donors. We got some gifts from friends. My daughters, and there's one of them right there. Kind of a cute picture. My daughters got a Cocker Spaniel puppy. They love that puppy. They named it Checkers. That's the Checkers speech. Do you want me to take away their dog? Is that what you call a bribe? My daughter's little Cocker Spaniel? It worked. Thousands of people called the Eisenhower campaign headquarters and the Republican National Committee campaign headquarters saying Nixon should stay on. And this showed something amazing. The image machine. TV, Nixon used it to make himself look like an average person who's being persecuted by forces that he can't see. Now, let's be clear about it. This was so humiliating. You had to go beg for it. And Nixon was a seething pool of resentment. Always resentful and angry and really smart. And he never forgot this. And he will never forget anything, any slight against him. Yes.
Which is, the problem was, the way he portrayed it to be is like an average person who's being attacked with substance. He was kind of true.
It kind of was, but it's misleading still. And he would think he understood television. Remember back in 1840, that log cabin and hard cider campaign? The one where William Henry Harrison acted like he was a Jacksonian even though he was an elite? Image. Remember that 1928, I played you that little bit of Al Smith, the Democratic nominee, and he had that voice like a gangster? You know, let's look at the record. Image. Roosevelt's amazing voice on the radio. Image. TV does it by 1,000-fold. Nixon thought he understood it. Then he'll meet in debate, the first ever presidential debate with John Kennedy. Image. But with that, one other thing. This is the first campaign where one side went to an advertising agency. The Republicans realized they went to a guy named Rosser Reeves, who would make one of the most popular TV ads ever, the personification of new modern political ads, and it's going to be a tune that you're going to catch and hum, and you're going to thank me for.
I for president, I for president, I for president, I for president. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum. We'll take I to Washington. We don't want John or Harry. Let's do that big job right.
See, is that catchy?
Step with the guy that said, getting step with I. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. Hang out the banner.
And by the way, George, I think master
We got to step where we are going.
the greatest acting in Africa. They don't get popular. You don't want people to remember it. I'm sorry, you don't want people to like the version. You want people to remember it. This song is really annoying.
Yeah,
And it's really catchy. And then he did one more thing. Rosser Reeves, the ad man, found people in Times Square, and in New York City, tourists, brought them into a little studio with just a plain gray mat and filmed them asking questions, one after another, just asking a question, and had them look up like they're looking up at somebody of important stature. And then separately, they had Eisenhower with the same gray background, looking down and listening, and then reading answers. So they're not together, but it was a brilliant ad. Oh, one more thing. Eisenhower was blind. He could not see without his glasses. He had big, thick glasses. But he didn't want to wear his glasses. Or I'm sorry, he wanted to wear his glasses. They said, no, you look manly if you don't. You look more manly without your glasses. So he took it off, but then he couldn't read the cue cards. So they literally had 15 by 15 sheets with letters a foot high. So two big ones. You see him read one and then go to another one.
We see that many of them.
So here it is.
Eisenhower answers America.
So
They
see him
say
looking
we've
up.
never had it so good.
Isn't he
But
great?
I've had to stop buying eggs. They're so expensive.
No wonder. You actually pay 100 different taxes on just one egg. We must cut costs, which means we must cut taxes.
Okay. They're really
Eisenhower
effective.
answers
Here's another
America.
one.
General, how would you clean up the mess
See?
in Washington?
So doesn't Eisenhower look
My answer?
big?
It's not a one-agency mess, or even a one-department mess.
He's reading,
It's a top-to-bottom mess.
and then goes to the next.
And I promise we will clean it up from top to bottom.
So well, so it's into the TV. Like he's
Yeah.
answering the question, then he looks like he's looking into the camera.
And the thing is, Stevenson, who was such an eloquent speaker, he couldn't do that. He called it that damn infernal machine, the cameras. And he couldn't look, he couldn't do it. A good politician has got to be able to look into a camera and act like you're talking to your best friend. And that's hard to do. So, it was a landslide. Because they dropped the civil rights platform, a lot of Democratic states came back, but even though some states were closed, still an Eisenhower sweep. And add this, in 1956, they did the sequel. The exact same thing with almost the exact same result. Eisenhower beat Stevenson. And one thing about this, the war did end. It took a while, but October 53, an armistice was signed. Over 1 million South Koreans, over 1 million North Koreans, most of them civilians died. Over 40,000, it says 36, but the figure we now believe is over 40,000 American soldiers died. And you notice it's mostly civilians. This is going to be a problem that's from World War II on. War that Americans are in, yes, a lot of soldiers are going to die and be wounded. But we focused on that, not realizing the civilian costs of these wars. Just like during World War II, we never understood what the Soviets went through, and that would lead to so much of American distrust after World War II. Didn't mean we should trust Stalin. We just didn't understand where he was coming from. Yes.
What day was this?
Just October of 53. So the war is over. But one thing about this, last thing for today. To most Americans, the war was over, and it was like, thank goodness, because they have more money and more affluence than ever before. Remember the Great Compression? All of a sudden, they had money to spend. Oh, I jumped the gun here. Dynamic conservatism. Eisenhower's campaign was called dynamic conservatism. I'll finish this on Monday after the quiz. Sound good? Maybe. You. Come on, everybody. On the way out. Let's get it going.
I for president, I for president, I for president, I for
It's gonna get on
president.
loop.
You
It's
like
from now on, every day.
everybody likes I for president. I got the banner, did you go? We'll take I to Washington. We don't want John or Harry, let's do that big job right. Let's get it up with the guy that's me.
I was gonna get that.
You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. I got the banner, did you go? We'll take
And
I
then I'm
to
gonna sign
Washington.
that.
Got to get where we are going. Travel day and night, for president. Adelaide, go the other way. We all go with I. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. I got the banner, did you go? We'll take I to Washington. We'll take I to Washington. Now is the time for all good Americans to come to the aid of their country.
And it gives that kind of like a reflection so you can see them. And you notice how they're gray and they're kind of, they look cold. I mean, the weather is just awful. And the summer's over 100. Yeah, that's a well done monument.
And then they had like the number of MIA casualties and like civilian deaths next to it. It is crazy. I just remember seeing those.
How many civilians, especially?
So what's
Yeah, they did the Vietnam, and that was really Memorial was really controversial in the 80s. And that one, and then it wasn't to the end of the 90s until they appropriated money for World War II. That wasn't until you were a little boy.
So was MacArthur just on?
No,
Or,
no.
just
He just was fired from that position, but he was still in the army. And didn't resign.
You like Ike?
I like Ike.
Hey, you guys keep lying it.
Oh, yeah, forgot my fault, my fault.
Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president, Ike for president. You like Ike, I like Ike.
See, you can't help it.
Ike for president. We'll take Ike to Washington. We don't want John or Harry to do that big job right. Let's get in step with the guy that's left. Get in step with Ike. You like Ike, I like Ike. Everybody likes Ike for president. Hang out the band, beat the drum. We'll take Ike to Washington. We got to get where we are going to travel day and night for president. Adelaide, go the other way. We'll all go with Ike. You like Ike, I like Ike. Everybody likes Ike for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum. We'll take Ike to Washington. We'll take Ike to Washington.
Now is the time for all good Americans to come to the aid of their country.
That's awesome. Now it's time for good Americans to come to the aid.
Skippers. They're all skippers.
Yeah, I wonder how many of the yahoos will be here.
You just wait till May 11th. Be here.
Yeah, I'm maxed out. I'm not doing May 11th. Yeah.
You know, yeah, I have nothing.
Did you have a senior skip day in your high school?
No,
Miles City.
no, it's stupid. It's just stupid. I'm not much for being a follower, so
He's a leader.
not necessarily. I'm just honored. What's that?
Doesn't mean he's a leader. Mr. Partridge, did I do really poorly on my brainstorm outline pieces?
I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Okay. You ever see Partridge angry? It's very hard to do, but it's possible. Well, this is actually kind of nice. I'm looking forward to the last, like.
Here we go.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know and young enough to do. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight? A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right. A loyal man who brings a job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed? It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you like a man who has straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
When you go to the voting booth.
I was born.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. That's what's going through your head.
Okay, so before we get going, we do have one more to do.
No, it's not. Why is everyone got a wacky good presidents?
We represent.
Here we go.
No one likes to be a keeper.
We represent the majority of the people in Alabama who hate niggerism, Catholicism, Judaism, and all the isms of the whole world. So said Robert Creel of the Alabama Ku Klux Klan. He also said, I like Barry Goldwater. He needs our help. Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd.
That's actually a pretty good.
Hands over your hearts. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Оглядывайтесь, мы вас не добили под Сталинградом, на Украине, Беларуси.
One nation under God, indivisible.
Против нас и будете опять готовить нападение, мы так и с ним.
I want American kids to grow up as Americans, and they will, if we have the guts to make our intentions clear. So clear they don't need translation or interpretation, just respect for a country prepared as no country in all history ever was.
In your heart, you know he's right. Vote for Barry Goldwater.
I only heard his name once.
All right, we'll see it.
Kennedy's Island.
No.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
What? I don't like this thing, girl.
This freaked me out the first time you showed it.
She freaked everyone out. Weird.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
Hey, I won.
Yeah, that's without a doubt the greatest political ad ever.
Are you sure about
Yes. Bear in the Woods is a pretty good one. All right, so there's some, but that one, I mean,
Takes the cake.
all it took, only showed it one time.
Now,
All right, so Grace has a crime to tell us.
imagine if we did that today. Modernize the ad for something.
I don't think they can.
There were some pretty blatant ads about people being soft on terrorism that were pretty close, especially in local ones. There was some in Georgia in 2002. You would not have believed. Okay, so Grace is going to do her. She's going to talk, and then she's going to read her entire newspaper, and you have a presentation and a diorama. You ready? Let's do it. So, oh, before you do it, I'm going to count how many people are gone today and have their parents call them out. That's what I really respect. I got to go. Look at all these people. Almost all of them had their parents call them out.
Wins.
Total wins.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna skip, at least you know.
My mom called me out because she gets
Do the effort
annoyed
not
because
to
she keeps
play
getting emails and like calls being like, your child's not here, and she gets annoyed. So she calls them back and it's like, I don't know where my child is, but she won't be coming.
Well, that's close enough. I'm ready. Go ahead.
I did John Wayne Gacy, the infamous serial killer. He dressed up as a clown. That was one of his professions. So my article title was called "Pogo the Killer Clown," and my newspaper is called The Jester Journal. Anyway,
That's good. I'll give you that. Okay.
So one night, this young boy named Robert Heist went missing, and he had told his mother that he was going to meet with a contractor to discuss business work, and then he never came home that night. So his mom reported to the police that her son was missing, and then so they went and asked the contractor questions, who turned out to be Gacy, and he was like very normal. Like he was just like, no, I've never talked to this kid before. And then they got a warrant to search his house, and they found a receipt in his house that belonged to Robert, the boy. And so then that allowed them to get like a full search warrant, and then they there was a officer that was in the bathroom of the house, and he smelled like this really strange smell from the vents because the furnace had turned on. And so they went and they were searching like the basement, and then they went into the crawl space, and they just started like digging up, and then they found some bones, and it turns out there were 26 bodies in the crawl space of his basement, and they were all young boys or young men. And so he had killed 33 total, and there was like only 26 under his house. Only 26. And then there were some like he had just put like in the woods, and then like in the river and stuff like that. But most of them are underneath his house. So then they convicted him, but he pled guilty. But then he like was denying it the whole time, even though he pled guilty. He was just like, I didn't do this. Like he pretty much just tried to avoid the fact that he was going to die for what he did. And then he was sentenced to death. He died May 11th, 1978, I think. 1978, yeah. And all of his murders involved rape and strangulation. And then he would bury them in his house. So when he was a kid, his father was really abusive and used to like just beat him all the time, and he was an alcoholic. And then he also had a heart condition when he was a little boy that prevented him from like going outside and playing with the other kids, so he was very isolated. So that's kind of like an explanation, I guess. But, yeah.
So what's one of the stories?
Roman Polanski flees to France in 1978.
Well, there's a lot of Roman Polanski references now.
And Jonestown was 1978. And Grease came out, the movie.
Another bad one. Okay, go on.
And
Johnny Gacy was scary, and clowns are already creepy, and then that just makes it. Does anyone here like clowns?
If they do, they're serial killer.
Yeah, you do.
If you like clowns.
Don't turn your back on her. All right. Good job, Grace. Okay, we'll take a couple minutes. Everyone go past you might pass them the one, and why don't you give one of your copies? Are those? Oh, no.
It's just one.
You only made one copy?
Yeah.
After all we've done.
I haven't seen any other presentations. I can print more.
That's okay. Go past and look around, and then I'm trying to stop. I want to show you man out now. I kind of want to do it to punish the people who aren't here.
We should just watch more campaign videos.
Does clowns have red nose because they're communists?
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. We need to make an ad about that.
We should go hang out on Partridge Knoll.
Just edit in.
God, we're not that cool. I'm sure there's a second shooter out
there. What?
What?
You know the Kennedy assassination?
Happened on
the grassy knoll, Partridge Knoll, they all started with a second shooter on the grassy knoll.
Oh boy, the suspense is killing me.
But if you don't know the reference,
I've seen it.
I had a nightmare after I was researching.
Oh, really?
I had a dream that I went into a house and found a bunch of dead bodies. It was really scary.
I can see that.
So you're responsible for my trauma.
Yeah. So if you also start getting clown makeup, and who are you gonna blame? Mr. Larson. It's Mr. Larson or Mahalik. That's who you're going for everyone.
That's terrifying.
And
is the car safe though?
Yeah, the first time I saw that, the Jonestown video, the one I showed you, I've got dreams about that. Just like little, and I remember too, but that was scary. Him talking. So I had a couple dreams about like trying to run away from somebody, and there was a voice, and it was him. He's on the radio. Remember that part? He's on the radio, and now that kind of don't be afraid.
Actually run, or were you like running in place?
I don't remember. It's just
that's the worst.
when you're trying to run, but
yeah, you can't run.
And then you sleep in the
I have dreams that I like miss tests.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
I'm like,
and then I wake
Okay,
up like
dream
it's
of miss
terrible.
tests. Yes, I had dreams where I missed tests and they show up. I used to have those in college all the time. That's up to a final.
No retake of that.
See the test go. It's too late now.
Okay, so
Are we gonna do the US history practice?
clear your desk. Okay, so with so many people gone, we'll get back to Amen Out on Monday.
Weird 70s night, Taco Bell.
Yes. What do you want to do? You want to watch it?
Wait, are we supposed to give them our notes and be kind?
No. The hell with them. Okay, we'll watch about half hour then, okay? And it is a really good movie. And it's so well acted and it's so realistic. Great actors. Even I thought Charlie Sheen was a good actor for a while.
He was good in Platoon.
Yeah, he's great at Platoon. Yeah, he really was. But then, yeah, moving on. Oh, I forgot he was in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah,
He was like the
He was the drug guy that the guy in the jail.
kind of thug,
Yeah.
the crook, the tough kid.
You won't learn.
That guy who did that was Nixon.
Oh my gosh, what's he actually?
Yeah, Ben Stein.
Explains everything.
He was actually on Nixon's staff.
Oh my god.
And every once in a while they'll bring him on TV to talk about politics, and it's pretty fun. He's Republican, obviously, because it's Nixon. And just kind of wait a minute, you're on Ferris Bueller. Okay, so I'm trying to get this.
Nixon's starting to creep up in English right now.
If you got Eddie.
This is, I think, maybe 30 seconds.
See, I told you, Bill. It's the little champ. They don't take nickel bets down here, fellas. Hey, that's all right. You were a ball player. Bill Burns. Sleepy Bill Burns. Strictly bench material. I won a few games. You lost a few more. And you, my friend, did not get that nose bobbing for apples. I'm a fighter. Sort of. Let's see. Philly? Yeah. Philly, my heart. You seen me fight? Yeah, I seen you. You're a bum.
Abe Attell was a the lightweight champion, but he took money on the fixed fights, and they mentioned it in the movie, but we're kind of cleaning up. You might have missed it. He fixed a fight by actually keeping up another fighter who was just a bum for 3 rounds. Kept the fight going 3 rounds so he could lose a decision. And that is a master at fixing fights. Because normally, if you're going to fix a fight, what do? You act like you got hit and got knocked out. But the big money was on the fight going to the bell, the final bell, and get a decision. He was a master. But once that gets
Hey, yeah. So what do you two birds want with me? Where did you work for on a Rothstein? You got a proposition to make. Could be big money. Well, I'm Mr. Rothstein's ears, so let's hear it.
So remember, sports Sullivan.
No dice.
Not going to give him the money.
No dice. You're a practical man, Lefty. You can see the advantages.
Lefty Williams.
We got Seacott in the bag already. The hell you do. He's in, Lefty. You can ask him. Eddie can dump 3 games all on his own. The thing is done, Lefty, with you or without you. We just didn't want to leave you out of the payday. If you got Eddie, you got me too.
Remember, Seacott was promised a bonus.
Lord, who is that?
Salesman.
Well, whatever he's selling, we don't want none.
Maxie Schwartz and Irish Tommy Flynn.
That's awesome.
Pretty tough boys.
What's the action
Basically
on?
looks like them.
Both are young and stupid, trying to make it the hard way. I'd lay off if I was you.
Fight's on the level, huh?
Listen, they are. This series thing, those ham and eggers pitched.
Not interested.
We could see a good hunk of change on it. If it's Burns and Maharg you're worried about, we could just cut them out and do it ourselves.
Word gets out, Arnold Rothstein's betting against the Sox. What happens to the odds?
They drop down the job, but I could bet through these guys.
How long do you think they're going to keep their mouths shut? 20 minutes? Half hour? What?
Yeah, but they got 6 guys, maybe 7.
Doesn't surprise me.
But they're the champs.
You were the champ once, Abe. You went down for the Bucks.
This is different.
Look, champ, I know who these guys are. I grew up with guys like that. I was the fat kid they wouldn't let play. Sit down, fat boy. That's what they tell me. Sit down. Maybe you'll learn something. Well, I learned something, all right? Pretty soon, I owned the game. And those guys I come up with, they come to me now with their hats in their hands. Tell me, champ, all those years of pugging, how much you make?
The honest fights are the ones I tanked.
Altogether, I must have made 10 times more betting on you than you did slugging it out. And I never took a punch.
Yeah, but I was champ. Featherweight champion of the world.
Yesterday. That was yesterday.
No, you're wrong. I was champ. And can nothing take that away. I know, about this fixed thing, maybe if we worked it
Not
over.
interested, Abe.
That's a really good one.
I'm gonna go get me some air. I'll see you later.
Yeah, so we didn't trust Burns and we didn't trust him. Did you trust those two?
Gramercy 8439. 8439. Right. Nat. AR. Tell you Mr. Sullivan he could stop by tonight. Have him use the servant's entrance.
Yeah, he's in. He wants his name kept out of it. Mr. Rusty don't like publicity. No problem, because if this gets out, the odds go to shit, the deal's out.
Kendall wants 100,000 for the players. That shouldn't be any problem for Al Rusty.
Did you catch it? Abe Attell lied. Abe Attell lied to Burns and said that Rothstein's in. Did you catch that? So Abe Attell's just doing it on his own. But Rothstein is about ready to talk to Sport Sullivan, the other guy who's doing it.
No. It's a cinch.
Yeah, I understand, Joey. My heart bleeds. But Mr. Rothstein's been carrying you on this for months now. You ain't come back with a nickel. That's right. I'm collecting for him now. What, you rather talk with Monk Eastman? No, Joey. I don't expect the whole 40 grand right up front. But listen, Joey, how about 10 or 15 as a gesture of good faith? It makes me happy to hear you say that, Joey.
So it's going to people who owe Rothstein money. To collect it, then to use that.
Come in.
That's a dangerous game.
Mr. Rothstein.
Let's hear it.
It's the series, Mr. Rothstein.
Seems to be a popular topic today.
I can get 8 men in, including Seacott.
So what do you need me for?
Well, I'm a big man in Boston, but Boston's a small town. The kind of cash that I need.
Man shouldn't bite off more than he can chew.
People watch what you do real close, Mr. Rothstein. If you or one of your people were to bet heavy on the Reds, well, if I lay action, the odds stay fat, and there's no direct link to.
Oh. Don't do anything till you hear from me.
Yes, sir. Good night, Mr. Rothstein.
Don't you? White suits? I wear a suit.
Big man in Boston.
You should have seen his place, Jimmy. The big bankroll. I've never seen the like of it outside of a museum.
Message from Mr. Rothstein. You, go away.
Jimmy, go get me some cigarettes for the trip.
Sure. Mr. Rothstein says he's in. 40 grand to the players up front. You hold the other 40 till they blow the series. Tell Seacott to hit the first batter if the fix is on. Anybody connects Mr. Rothstein with this, I come see you again. You don't want that.
You tell Mr. Rothstein he's got my word.
Well, that actor, I think he's been typecast as a Bond that does he look exactly like every Bond that
I never knew you smoke, sport. Holy mother.
You look at it, Jimmy. All spread out like that.
Whose is it?
What do you think? I want you to take this 20,000 back to Boston. I want you to go over to Mulcahy. You know the password. I want you to put it all down on Cincinnati for the first game. Tell him it's just a hunch I've got.
Some hunch?
Then, I want you to take this to McGinnis. You tell him you're sure I've gone crazy. But I want to place 10 big ones on the Reds for the whole show.
I'm laying bets for Rothstein.
You're laying bets for me. A thief in judo or not, but he just giving me a loan.
Well, then what's left for the players?
Jimmy, you know what you feed a dray horse in the morning if you want a day's work out of him?
What?
Just enough so he knows he's hungry.
So to catch what he did, he took the money he's supposed to pay the players, and he's going to lay it down on bets and just give a little bit to the players. Just a little bit. That's Sports Sullivan. So Rothstein doesn't know. Abe Attell's doing this. We have 2 different bribery scams going right now. And remember, Seacott is going to hit the first batter, and he won't do it unless there's $10,000 under his pillow. That's training. Who's been on a steam engine? That's how you used to have to get to school.
Hey, boy. Hey, you guys weigh in on this? Yeah, I hear candle views from the bottom.
Good luck with the Reds, fellas. Thanks, Frank.
Ringline was Dennis John Sales, the director of the
Fellas, good luck, nothing dead. Hey, Eddie. How's the old soup bone feeling?
Not bad.
Huey's bringing his nest egg down to lay it on you birds for the series.
I should not do that. Anything can happen in baseball.
Huey's a lucky man.
Hope won't have nothing to do with it.
Eddie.
Excuse me, Ray.
Come on. It's in the bag. I just wanted to let you and Buck in on the tape.
You know what, Dick?
Well, it sounds like you're already in pretty deep.
Come on, Hap. We lose a couple games. We make $20,000.
A couple or the whole bit?
Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you guys talking about?
What about Jags? The Swede's pitching him right now. He'll come around.
Because if Shoeless Joe ain't in, I ain't in. So what if they find out that you're dealing double? You cross a guy like Rothstein, they're going to find you in the gutter with your little toes screwed up.
Say, fellas,
Who's this?
anyone care for a drink?
Hey, Joe.
Shoeless Joe would do this. What are you saying right here?
I'll stare at it till the eye goes blind. What then? Do the other one.
He thought he could see the ball better. So he really would do that.
It's good for my back now. Something wrong?
Don't do that.
Hey, you're the doctor. Listen, Joe, we got together, most of the guys, and the thing is, we're gonna drop a couple of games in the series. Who? Oh, everybody. Chick, me, Seacott, Lefty. Lefty. Sure, Lefty. And Fred, and Hap, and Bucky. Everybody. And Joe, some of them, well, I won't name names, but I had to tell him, no, we can't leave Joe out of this. He's one of us. I says, you want me? I need you, Joe. I don't know. You'd be an awful sap to turn it down at this point, Joe. Lefty and Eddie. I mean, it would just be stupid not to do it. You don't want to be stupid, do you, Joe? I don't know. People are going to be awful pissed if you fuck up their plans, Joe. You don't want to piss everybody off, do you, Joe? Huh? You don't want me mad at you. Everybody else is in. Everybody we need. Okay. There's a good boy. You won't have to look bad. Just ease off a bit. That's all we want. Yeah. Oh, about the money. At least 10 grand. On top of your regular series pay. Chick's working.
He was one of the greatest players.
Hey, Bucky. Welcome to the club.
Now, sport, how about it, eh?
If you let us come through, Chicky, you'll see the rest of it, but you gotta show us something first.
Now, listen, I told you,
Hey,
boy,
sweet.
before.
You're looking fit, boy.
We didn't get all the money, just a little bit.
You come through?
Everything's well. Listen, Burns and Mayhawk are in the bar car with the Stay Battelle character. They say they got the jack lined up, so go in there, have a couple of pops with them till I'm through with the boys in here, okay?
Sure. And what's with Bucky?
No problem. Bucky's one of the boys.
Great. You get it all done? I told him bet last night at 7-3 on the Sox. Now it's even money. You're kidding. No, I'm not kidding. Some very big money from New York went down on the Reds. Maybe they know something we don't. Hey, Seacott's arm sore? Hey, he's had it sore on for 10 years. Something stuff. Hey, dude. Not a trace of the town. Who's a little rat?
All on bets.
Well, that's not good enough.
Jesus, you'll get it soon enough.
When? How much?
100 grand, like I said, 20 after each game.
Oh, wait a minute. That's 5 games. I thought we were just gonna dump a few.
No, you lose the first 3.
Kerr's going in the third. He's not with us.
So what? We don't have form, he'll fold. He's a bush.
After that, we'll play it by ear. We got to make this look good, see? Burns will bring the money
I said
after
before
each
the
game.
first game, Chick.
Look under your pillow.
Huh?
Compliments of
When
sports
Arnold
center.
Rothstein fixes something, it stays fixed.
You had to jump on his Bucky? Oh, hey, kid. No, it's just all them reporters at the hotel. I couldn't think. Some of you fellas got together on the train last night. Talk, you know? Something on your mind, Bucky? Huh? You don't look so good. Kid, what would you... Oh, forget it. It's just nerves. It's nerves is all. Remember all them ground balls hit you when you first come up?
Yeah. Made a ball player out of me.
Yeah, you were a ball player all along. I just took some of the rough edges off, that's all.
You miss it, kid, playing?
Every day and every night.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd do without it.
I'm gonna go back, get some sleep, huh? Gonna be sharp for them Reds tomorrow.
All right. See you in the morning.
Nice, son.
See a suit, and you put the paper collar in there. This collar were more expensive. Yeah. You buy the shirt cheaper than
These guys don't look so tough. That's what Custer said when the Indians took the field.
Like I heard the same thing, fellas. Every series I've been to, there's been some rumor about a fix just to shake up the odds. You ain't that buzz, you hear a lot of screwy things.
Doesn't mean they're not true.
If my guys would have told me something was up.
Sure they would.
Give them a hand.
Let's keep separate scorecards. You circle every play that smells fishy. I'll do the same and compare them after the game.
that guy right there, Studs Terkel. He was one of the great journalists, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists after World War II. He died in the 1990s. So he's a really famous author, big opponent of the Vietnam War. But sales really wanted him. He's a perfect guy for this kind of grizzled old.
Yeah. Nothing to it. How's it feel, Joe?
I don't want to play.
What?
I don't want to play. And you can tell the boss that too.
You'll play, Jackson. You'll play. I've been hearing a lot about odds lately. Like this is a racetrack. Everybody's a damn handicapper. Or sometimes the smart money gets a little too smart for its own good. But I'll tell you, I've been in this game over 30 years. I never yet seen a club could hold a candle to you fellas. That's a straight dope. The way I figure, we can't be beaten. We can only beat ourselves. You fellas know what I mean. All right, let's get them. All right.
So, regular broadcast radio was there, so they would, if you weren't in the town, they would do it by telegraph. And then have somebody like announcing the game, reading the telegraph, like they do a whole ad. And then they have these places set up where they would set like big.
Would you like a seat, Mr. Rusty? I won't be here that long. Raf, hit by a pitched ball, advances to first.
And Rossi knows it.
Ready? Let's go, ready? Come on, ready there, ready? Go, fine, ready? Okay, breathe in here, Eddie, breathe in here. Come on, Eddie. Back! Way to go, Happy!
What the hell's he doing? No one wants to look bad. Eddie's gonna have to do it all by himself.
Come on, guys, it should have been two. What up? What are you doing? Do it harder!
Okay, give me the ball. Take it easy. Give me the ball.
Hey, keep it down! That is a goddamn pitcher!
Because it's not your day, Eddie. That's not.
Daniel grounds out to second base. Final out. Redlegs 9, White Sox 1.
Okay, that's a good place to stop, I think. Got a good hunk of the movie in. So, I saw a couple good ideas in there that, since we're the only ones watching, would make great bonus questions. Who agrees with me? Like a 5-point bonus question? So, like, what did Shoeless Joe Jackson want to do? Or what did Seacott do to the first batter?
Yeah, I'm starting to confuse the names.
I know. Shoeless Joe Jackson was the guy who said he wasn't going to play.
He's the one who stared at the camera.
Stared at the camera, yep. Shoeless Joe. I'll try to say the names again. I'll do it again Monday. Remind me to do it. He was maybe one of the all-time greatest hitters ever.
They all look the same. When Dave said he was the best in the world, and Austin said, this is about the money, kind of like revised the whole scandal.
And I like when Abe Patel says, I was champion of the world. That means something. And Austin didn't even look up. I thought that was a good scene. That's a good movie. John Sayles is a great director.
Still alive?
Yeah.
What other movies do we
Probably his best known one was a movie called Matewan, and that was a movie about the Virginia Coal Miners War. And he has a whole crew of actors that kind of appear in all his movies. So a bunch of guys in that one are in this one. All the character actors, and it's fantastic. In fact, if we do the Rebels and Revolutionaries, that kind of thing, we'll do. We might watch Matewan. Did a few other ones. Passion Fish, which he wrote that. There's one I can't remember, but let me look. God, he did Piranha? You're kidding me.
It's another cartoon.
Oh, it's a movie about these killer piranhas. Hey, sometimes you gotta find work. Lone Star was a good movie. He made that one. What's the movie? Really good one. Oh, City of Hope. That is excellent. Hi, for president. Here we go. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
I for president, I for president, I for president, I for president. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum. We'll take I to Washington. We don't want John or Harry. Let's do the big stuff right. Let's get in step with the guy that's left. Get in step with I. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum. Take I to Washington. We got to get where we are going. There will be a night for us that Adelaide go the other way. We'll all go with I. You like I like I. Everybody likes I for president. Hang out the banner, beat the drum. We'll take I to Washington. We'll take I to Washington.
Now is the time for all good Americans to come to the aid of their country. Vote for Eisenhower.
It's as like to you, as me to me. I don't care how you quote it. As me, as I don't pronounce it. Just go out and quote it. Stevenson.
Yeah, that's a bad commercial.
Vote Stevenson, vote Stevenson, a man you can believe in, son. From Illinois to Lincoln,
Yeah, this was really excellent.
has
It was a
one
bad copy.
thing. A soldier man is always bound to think in terms of battleground.
Is this commercial awesome?
Civilian son will lead us till the peace is won.
You like that one?
What's your favorite political ad?
Well, Daisy had.
That's so terrifying. Did you ever watch that?
Do you know what people used to do? They used to explode atomic bombs in the air. Now, children should have lots of vitamin A and calcium, but they shouldn't have any strontium-90 or cesium-137. These things come from atomic bombs, and they're radioactive. They can make you die. Do you know what people finally did? They got together and signed a nuclear test ban treaty, and then the radioactive poison started to go away. But now, there's a man who wants to be president of the United States, and he doesn't like this treaty. He fought against it. He even voted against it. He wants to go on testing more bombs. His name is Barry Goldwater, and if he's elected, they might start testing all over again.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
Is that a pretty good commercial?
I heard Sonic Night gave you superpowers.
You want this? You want to see the probably the worst political ad
Bush
ever?
and Dukakis.
1988.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
That's probably one of the most racist commercials ever. George Herbert Walker.
As Governor Michael Dukakis vetoed mandatory.
They really hit that one. Want to get another good ad? Ooh. Some of these ads are so bad.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush.
Rosendale one from the last election where he like shot down a drone or something.
Oh yeah, Rosendale shooting on a drone. We gotta get that one.
Pretty national news.
I mean, does it count as important personal crimes?
I think it was funny that he took that entry.
Oh, he might have taken it down.
No.
Oh, we all need to see that.
I'm Matt Rosendale.
Yeah.
There it is.
He's 20% it right now.
Yes.
And this is how I'd look from a government drone. And this is what I think about it. The federal government is too big and too powerful. More taxes and regulations put Montana families out of work. Spying on our citizens, that's just wrong. I'm Matt Rosendale, and I approve this message because I'm ready to stand tall for freedom. That's just wrong.
Look where he's at. Wait, wait. Look where he's at. See? Look at the terrain behind him. Where's he at? He's from Glendive. That does not look like Glendive. Actually, he's not from Glendive. He's New Jersey, by the way. Maybe a Montana.
This is what happens.
Huh?
I'm like, sir, you tell those girls what you think is so funny.
Can't make up that. He must be our next senator. Thank you for reminding about that one, Hayden. You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike.
Hey, well, you have a good time, Matt. Have a great weekend as well. See ya. Howdy, stranger.
Oh God, I didn't even know you worked here anymore.
Well, looking at my calendar for the past several weeks, I'm pretty sure Sims has taught more than I have. And that'll continue as I will be in Atlanta.
You are going. That's awesome.
Totally awesome. For 3 days, it's a short trip. But
Hey, whatever.
Hey, I'll take it. It's the final DECA experience. So I'm going to enjoy it.
Oh yeah, because without you should be at the Blackfoot.
Yeah, exactly.
So you damn well better be there because that's how I live there.
Men tonight? Yes.
Yeah. Yola Drive.
All right. I'm there. Would you do me a favor?
No.
Save the school district some postage. Deliver that to your wife. Parking passes for the MLS attorneys that she's sending.
You know.
Do you want me to bill the school? I'll pay you postage.
If you want to build a school, and we'll split the difference. I can do that.
Awesome.
And we should get together one of these days, have a beer, talk about our trips.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Sounds like, in fact, as I was sharing emails,
When will you be back in
Kristen,
June?
you guys had a good time in June. Yeah, no, I'll be back Thursday. I'll be back in the school on Thursday. So sometime in the near future. Yeah. No, Egypt was awesome. It sounds like you guys had a blast.
We had a blast, yeah, it was fun.
Really relaxing as usual.
It was relaxing, but then we have to come back and immediately snow like the first day we're here. I shoveled 3 times the first day back. I was like, Jesus Christ.
So when did you guys get back? What day?
Sunday. And then Monday.
You had Monday Easter break?
Yeah.
So, okay.
And you guys got back.
We got back Saturday night. So we had Sunday to recoup a little bit and back to the grind on Monday, and that was a hard day. That's awful. It is, but I mean, it's worth the money to stay an extra day rather than come home. I mean, when you're that far across the world, it makes no sense coming home just so you can sleep or rest. You can sleep when you're dead.
Oh, yeah.
So, but no, it was excellent. I would strongly recommend it. We had an absolute blast. It was everything we wanted and more.
Cool.
There was not a single thing that went wrong. I got a little sick to my stomach one night. I don't know what it was exactly, because you're not supposed to drink the water, and we avoided it, but we were brushing our teeth using the tap water and stuff like that, so I don't know if that's what got me, but otherwise it was pretty incredible. So,
sounds great.
Yeah, but I got some pictures to show you, and I'd like to hear more about your trip, so yeah, once I get back, we will have to
Let me
figure
ask you
something
this.
out.
Can you get like a booze there? Get a beer?
Yes, the beer sucks up.
Yeah, that's what
Micro
I knew
brews
there
are
was
not.
an option.
Yeah, it's, what is it? Stella. It's the Egyptian version. I mean, it's literally called Stella, but it's brewed there. And it's the only beer you can get. And they do have a malt liquor as well that's like 10%, but I didn't even try that because I don't like malt liquor. So yeah, the first thing I did when we got to Denver from Frankfurt was get an IPA. That was the very first thing I did. I needed it. And it was like 9 o'clock in the morning on top of that. But it was perfect. Yeah, what we did is we went to a duty-free store and bought 3 bottles of liquor. We got some whiskey, some bourbon, or some scotch, and then some vodka. And that's what we drank most of the time, just mixed our own drinks.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because on the streets of Cairo, for example, you're not going to find many people just selling beer in the open because of Islam. But otherwise, if you want a beer, you can go into restaurants, some restaurants, and they do have some bars, but they all have the exact same selection. So those poor Egyptians, they don't know the pleasures of a good IPA.
No, I feel bad.
Can't imagine. They've got the pyramids, but they don't have an IPA.
Yeah, pyramids. Sphinx, yes.
Big deal.
Yeah, that's the thing. We were in Minneapolis, the first thing. Got a really good IPA there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But
it's so good, that first beer when you get back. The only foreign country that I've visited that has had an excellent selection, I think I told you this, is Panama.
Oh yeah.
They are really getting into the microbrews, and they had some of the best beer I've ever tasted. So that's another place I'd recommend.
I mean, we got a couple good microbrews in Mexico. There's one.
Really?
Yeah, it's starting to pick up. There were 3. One kind of gave me a headache. One was pretty good, and one was good beer.
Yeah. It's always kind of neat to taste the different ideas of what a microbrew should be from state to state and country to country.
That's why you need to go to England. That's all the microbrews are copied then. That's the more alcohol. All right, we'll talk about it.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, one more quick question.
Yes.
Do you have? So you cut your cord. We're going to do that. Do you have you have an antenna then for your TV and it picks up Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC, PBS?
Yep.
Pretty good. No.
I'd like to get a roof antenna eventually because there are sometimes I have to adjust it, and I have a pretty ghetto structure set up in my house right now. I have it just duct taped to my wall basically. Yeah. But my neighbors have a roof antenna. I would also look at Sling if you want.
We're going to do Sling.
Okay. I just have the basic package, and I get CNN when I want to get my cable news fix, and ESPN, a few other channels, and then I also do Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon.
We actually looked at Hulu TV, and it was so annoying.
Yeah.
The TV that we used to have.
They have recently changed their package. I used to not have ads because I watch a few series through Hulu, but they have now combined my Hulu with Spotify because it seemed like a better deal, which it is. I think you can get Spotify and Hulu, their basic package, for $12 a month or something like that. But the ads are fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nonstop.
And to get Hulu TV without ads is $55.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to get what the hell am I?
You might as well keep it cable. Yeah. But yeah, Amazon I rarely use for TV, but I already have Amazon Prime, so it's included. And then do you have Netflix or no?
Yeah, we have Netflix.
Yeah. So yeah, it works great. And if I added up all the costs that I'm incurring because of what I have, it might be ridiculous because I might be right up there with cable prices. But some of the stuff you can get on, Netflix and Hulu is better than cable.
Well, we're already getting Netflix.
Yeah.
We're already getting Netflix and Amazon Prime, so it's not like. Yeah, we got a couple internal antennas. I got a good deal on them.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they work. And
Yeah, cut it. It's worked for me. And then they're going to come begging. The cable company's going to offer you everything to come back. And so you might go back for a year at a killer of a deal.
Well, we were thinking about, what if we want to come back just during football season?
Yeah.
The problem with Sling, they have two different Slings. And Sling Basic has ESPN.
Yeah.
But
if you want an NFL Network.
But NFL Network, you have to get Sling Blue.
Yeah.
But then you can't get ESPN.
I know.
And we're like, what do we want?
Yeah.
And Chris is like, well, I want ESPN now. So we might do ESPN now because he wants to watch baseball.
And yeah.
And then just switch.
Sure, but then you wouldn't have Monday night. Or what is it, Sunday night?
Monday
night, yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
No. See, I thought that was gonna be a problem for me as well, but I don't watch enough football to really make it worth it as far as worrying about it. The NFL Network, I used to have Sunday Ticket, but I just didn't watch enough football to justify it.
I used to watch so much football.
Me too.
And then every year I'd watch less. Especially the further away I'm from coaching.
Yep.
And now that I'm not going to coach again, it just gets further.
Well, and you have other things to do on a Sunday, or a Saturday. I love watching football, college football, NFL. It's awesome, but I just don't have the time to sit down for an entire weekend doing nothing but watching football and drinking beer. As much fun as it is, I guess that's what the adult world does to a guy.
Yeah.
So that.
All right. Well, I will give that to my wife. I'm gonna have a Kit Kat milk chocolate thingy,
and then I hope you're leaving soon because I'm leaving soon.
I'm gonna stay here till 8,
Oh, that figures.
all for the kids.
Probably come back tomorrow morning as well.
I hope to see you.
I'm getting on a plane at 5:30, so probably not.
Well, somebody's got to teach her.
Make sure Sims behaves himself.
Have fun in Atlanta.